All right, I think we are streaming on Facebook Live. This is State Representative Lindsay LaPointe of the 19th House District. I am sheltering in place in Portage Park in Chicago on the far northwest side, and I am super excited to be here with Mandy Guzman today, who is a teacher at Dever Elementary School, which is in the 19th House District. It's on the western edge of the district, and we are going to be talking about running a GSA, which we'll double check the language with Mandy, but because I've heard a few things, but Gay Straight Alliance, but
they changed it.
All right, what's the new word?
So it's Gender and Sexualities Alliance. They changed it in 2016, but I think a lot of people still call it the Gay Straight Alliance. They just want to make it all inclusive.
Got it. That makes so much sense. That was what was in my head from when I was in high school, and we had it at my school back in the late 90s. So Mandy plays I'm going to call her Mandy because we're going to be informal here, and she's going to call me Lindsay.
Oh yeah, please call me Mandy.
Definitely.
That'd be weird.
We are going to talk about the GSA at Dever and LGBTQ youth and how to be the most inclusive that we can. So we're going to get into it. First, I'm going to set the stage, and then also I haven't obviously seen Mandy in a while, and I just want to touch base with her on kind of what's going on and what it's been like to teach remotely for the last quarter of the school year. But first of all, to zoom out, I'm not the most technological person, but this is my third Facebook Live, and some of them I've done in partnership with other local leaders. And we explore a variety of topics, and we're going virtual because of the pandemic. Unfortunately, we can't do in-person events, but as a new elected official and as a new leader who I get to go out across the district and meet a whole bunch of people and get up close to the innovative things that they're doing, that really informs me as a policymaker. I'm constantly excited about how do we further these conversations? How do I put a spotlight on the work that I see going on around the district? And when I met Mandy, when I first visited Dever Elementary School and then heard about the GSA at Dever, I immediately wanted to learn more and figure out how to do some education on this. I'm sorry, I'm here in my house alone and I'm getting texts, so that's why it seems I'm a little distracted because we're all learning how to multitask.
Oh my gosh, I'm horrible at it.
It's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why we're doing this now is because June is Pride Month, and so it's like we can't do kind of the normal Pride activities. We don't have a traditional Pride parade this year, so this was the time to have a conversation about GSA at Dever and kind of dig deep into all the different ways in all our different areas of life that we can be the most inclusive to lots of people, but certainly our LGBTQ students. So Mandy, first of all, how are you?
I'm okay. We're surviving. It's been a long 3 months, but it has for everyone. Balancing teaching and then having a kindergartner and a second grader, balancing our schedules and trying to figure out our Zoom meetings and our Google Meets, but we figured it out. We got it. We're done. Like yesterday was the last day of work. So 2 days ago. So we're feeling good and starting to make our summer bucket list now.
You and your daughters?
Yeah, me and my daughters.
Excellent.
What can we do? What's allowed to do right now? Oh shoot, there's a street cleaner coming down the street. Sorry, that's kind of loud.
I can't hear it. Well, I think everyone has been so challenged in slightly different ways. The phrase that I keep repeating to myself and saying out loud when I can is we are all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat, and help when you can, but let yourself be helped if you need to be helped. And when I think about the different boats that people are in, parents who are also teachers, and I'm neither of those things, but wow, I think those are some of the true heroes of this pandemic.
Thank you.
There's so much to juggle and manage, and it's a challenge. So I know summer's going to bring its own challenges, but congratulations for getting through.
Yeah, I think the most important thing with remote learning, though, honestly, like I know I have to teach, and I know that my students need to be educated. I teach history. I teach in 8th grade, and I actually know that I'm going to have the same group of kids next year. So that kind of relieved some of my stress about like, oh my gosh, they're not going to learn this and they're not going to learn this. But now I know that I'm moving up with them, so I have that opportunity. But most importantly is just that social emotional needs that they have, and finding a way to meet that, and also finding a way to connect. You know, I have 130 students, so it's a lot of students to try and make sure that, you know, they've got technology and that they're getting their work done and that they have support. A lot of our kids have parents who are essential workers, and it's hard on the kids. They have to self-motivate, and that's not easy to do when you're 13.
Absolutely not. I'd say that's one of the most challenging ages to self-motivate.
Oh, those poor kiddos. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about Dever Elementary School and kind of what the student population is like, and then we'll get started talking about the GSA or the 472.
Yes. Dever is a terrific school. I am so lucky to work there. I started about 7 years ago at Dever, and I was looking for a new job. And I remember I walked into Dever and I looked around and I was like, okay, I'm home. This is where I need to be. And I started off as a 5th grade teacher, and then I moved into history, and I found my passion in civics and community outreach, which is how we met, because you came to our Veterans Day celebration. But we met before that, I think, actually. I don't know if we did, but regardless. And then about 4 years ago, we got a new principal, Jason Major, and he is the most supportive. He's so incredible. Anytime we say, hey, we want to do this for the community, or we want to invite these people in, or we want to go on this field trip, he's like, all right, let's figure it out. Let's make it work. Let's do it. You know, last year we wanted to go to Feed My Starving Children. We didn't have enough money. He's like, that's fine. I'll pay for the buses. And we took the whole middle school. So it's a really supportive environment where we're figuring out how to give student voice. And that's definitely been a journey, because we knew we wanted to give student voice, but there's a way to do it. And at first we're just like, all right, have your voice. But now we're realizing, okay, we need to teach them how to have a voice. And over the last 2 years, we've been working with our students on, you know, how to call elected officials, or how to write letters to people, how to put yourself within the community, but do it in a respectful manner. So I think the kids are doing a great job, and we're just really lucky. We've such good kids.
That is tremendous. And I definitely like that vibe of being civically engaged and stepping up and asking questions, and just being creative. When I came to visit your school for the first time for this veterans event, which was
they were so excited to meet you. They were so excited.
And it was great for me. And it was so clear that the kids themselves, and these were middle school kids, which can be a challenging age.
Yes.
There was so much ownership of the event that it's really built around honoring veterans and having conversations with veterans and learning about their experience. And it was just walking into that school, it was so clear that there was so much energy and ownership over the event. So kudos.
The kids are awesome.
The leader at that school and creating that environment. So let's talk about the GSA and why it's called 472. Before we do that, I just want to share, this is stuff that you probably know, Mandy, a lot of people probably know, but in case they don't, it's really important to kind of set the context of part of the reason why I know I and you believe that things like GSAs in schools are not just important, but oftentimes inclusion can be a matter of life and death, and it can really put a young person on a path to confidence and success. And then when you don't have it, you're kind of exacerbating some risks that kind of inherently exist as kids grow up. So I was just reminding myself of some of the statistics related to LGBTQ youth. And in 2017, clearly not that long ago, in Illinois, 88% of LGBTQ students had heard the word gay used as a slur. So that's like almost everybody, which is hurtful and harmful. And on the flip side, only 24% of youth in Illinois had learned anything positive about LGBTQ people in their classrooms. What a juxtaposition.
Yeah.
That does not exacerbate it. It doesn't help create an inclusive, safe world for everybody.
No, it doesn't.
And then, of course, it's just the statistics that, and I come from a social work background, so I'm a little more acclimated to these statistics, I think, than some people from completely different backgrounds. But suicide is the leading cause of death, second leading cause of death for young people in general, ages 10 to 24. And it's just a fact that LGBTQ young people have a much higher risk of depression and trauma and suicide. It's just a factual elevated risk factor. So that's the world that we're living in, which to me kind of immediately tells me that inclusive spaces need to be carved out, and we need to be intentional about it. We need to support them and learn about them. So that's part of the reason why you're here. So tell us about where the name 472 came from, the GSA at Dever, and why you saw a need for it, or why other people saw a need.
So I have a good friend. Her name is Carolyn no, that's not her last name anymore. Carolyn Pinta. She and her daughter Molly and her husband Bob did the first Pride Parade in Buffalo Grove, which is where I'm from. And they're they are very, very active in the LGBTQ community. And I heard from students that there were some gay slurs that were happening, not in my classroom, but like out on the playground and at recess, and it was happening at our school. So I called my friend Carolyn and I asked if she and her daughter could come spend the day in my classroom. And of course, my principal said yes. And Molly came, and all day, every class, she spoke to my students about what it's like to be an out 8th grader and her journey and how she came out to her friends and what she was doing as an activist. And I invited kids who I don't have, but I knew needed to have. So I have 130 students, but they're students that I knew would benefit from Molly talking that weren't my students. So I went to those teachers and I got them out of their class periods because our teachers are so supportive. And Molly came and spent the day with us. And then I invited kids to come have lunch with Molly. And I kind of went away. I talked to Molly's mom because we're old friends, and they were so inspired. And Molly had told them that they started a GSA at their school in Buffalo Grove. And that was when she was able to come out and feel safe. And that day after school, a group of kids came to my classroom and said, we want to start a GSA. So, and I said, okay, let's do it. And that's when we started. So we had just a couple kids at first that kind of planned it. We had 2 kids in particular that were really strong leaders, and they sat down with one of my coworkers. I think I was absent that day, and they kind of made an outline. They decided to call it 472 because on the phone, if you look for GSA, it's 472.
Oh, wow.
Like old school texting. So they figured that out. And we together, they paved the way, like 100% they paved the way. We didn't do any posters. We didn't announce it because we didn't know. We had a lot of kids who want to keep their orientation on the down low right now, or they're questioning, or they're allies and they just want to learn more about it. So it was completely spread by word of mouth. We started by, creating a statement. So the moment kids walk into the room, the leader reads out she reads out something. She says, sorry, I'm looking for it because I was going to read it too, that they wrote it. It says, just welcome to 472. This is a safe place. Whether you're an ally, member, or teacher, what is said in this room will not leave here. And then they started creating a way to run the meetings. They did feeling check-ins, positive stories. They created a word of the day that had to do with LGBTQ. So it could be pansexual, because I didn't know all the terms. So they wanted to educate me. And that day we would focus on that term and talk about that term. And it just turned into something really, really beautiful. And we had over 30 members that are kind of crunching into my classroom. And it's really been a great experience. And now looking forward to next year, I know there's a lot. Chicago Public Schools provides so much support for GSAs and the Illinois Safe School Alliance. And I didn't know all of this when we started the GSA. I was just getting help from a friend, but I'm excited for next year. They offer trainings for kids. They offer trainings for adults. So to me, I think what they needed was a safe space to be themselves.
Yeah.
That was what they wanted.
And when was this that it was started?
Maybe November.
Okay, this year.
Yeah.
Wow. So
it was right after we had the speaker come in and they said, this is a need. And then teachers started recommending it to individual students, and everyone was so welcoming and open. And if kids were nervous to come into 472, I would assign a 472 member to approach them in the hallway and bring them with them, just so that they felt comfortable walking into the room in order to know that it really truly was a safe space.
Yeah. I keep thinking about your Molly, your friend's daughter.
Yeah, she's fab.
And how the idea of a peer coming in, there's power in an adult coming in and sharing their story too. But can you talk about how you think that made an impact on your students to see one of their peers from another school share her story versus an adult?
So that's the thing. As an adult, I can say to my students, well, when I was your age, well, that was 100 years ago. They think I rode a dinosaur to school. So they don't necessarily want to know what happened when it was my age, because I didn't grow up in social media, the time of social media. I didn't grow up with TikTok and Snapchat, but Molly has. So somebody their age really can completely be in their shoes and say, okay, this is how I dealt with it. This is where I went to find my support. And this is what I did. And it's just so much more relatable than, somebody my age. I don't have a story, but because I'm an ally, but anyone older, it can be very helpful and it can give them an adult to talk to. But Molly gave them her personal information. And I know a lot of kids stayed in touch with her, and she was so brave, and it really inspired my students to say, hey, if Molly can be brave and Molly can do this, too. And it's awesome. They've connected with her and they talk to her now.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's amazing how we know this is true, but to see it, one person and creating space for one person to have a microphone can create an impact across the whole school.
And I don't even think she knows how much of an impact she had. She just came to spend the day with us, but it was amazing. And it gave kids a place to really, really be themselves. So during our GSA, there are no rules. You can say what you want. You can do what you want, as long as you're not hurting people. You can use any vocabulary that you want. So they had a field day with that at the very beginning, the vocabulary, because they were so excited that they could say whatever they wanted. So it calmed down towards the end, but just the freedom of expression and to truly be themselves and silly and goofy and make jokes about themselves. it was so valuable that I found myself just looking forward to the weekly meetings and feeling like, okay, everything disappears now because I just get to be with this group of kids and listen.
Yeah. Wow.
They ran it. They run it. They're in charge.
Not surprised based on my visiting Devers school.
Yeah, I'm just an adult in the room.
So you mentioned weekly meetings or however else people come together, what I'll call them meetings, and maybe you do other events at the school, but talk a little bit more about the meetings or what happens in the group.
So it was really hard this year because Dever has no room. We have no space at our school. There's not like a free room that kids can go into. And during the winter, it proved to be really hard meeting because we did it during the lunch period and the recess period. And in hindsight, I now realize it needs to be an after school thing and then also a lunch thing. So kids can escape and just eat lunch and be chill in my room. But we meet, but it was hard because there was indoor recess and there was no space. But the lady who teaches Lit Lab, she does literacy with computers. She offered her room to us. So we wound up meeting in the computer lab. And it was in and out of kids wanting to go to recess and then eat lunch with us. And every day we did, the welcome speech, the feelings check-in, going around, sharing a positive story, the word of the day. It followed it. We had a lot of plans, but they kind of got cut short with coronavirus. They wanted to do a pride parade within our school. They also created a questionnaire for kids within the grade level to see how they identify, but it was optional, obviously, so we could see what we were working with. It was very grassroots and very much kid-led. And we invited other teachers in. Sometimes teachers would just come pop in and they would sit and eat lunch with us and everybody would just laugh and have fun. It was just a space. But also the kids had the opportunity to talk about coming out stories and wanting to come out and asking each other for advice on how to come out, or telling stories that didn't work out very well when they did attempt to come out, and just that overall support. And if anyone had experiences with kids saying anything negative to them, we talked about the kids would talk in a group. Well, how can we approach this person kindly and let them know that they're hurting us? So these kids are amazing, Lindsay.
That sounds amazing.
They're just such great kids.
Wow.
It was a support group. It was everything you could ever want in middle school when you're trying to fit in and it's so hard. And this was a space where it doesn't matter who you were outside of the classroom, like cool or not cool. Once you came into this space, everyone was on the same playing field and everybody was equal and supportive and loving, and friendships were created. And I was proud that they asked me to be a part of it, and I'm proud.
Yeah, amazing. And you're still in very early stages because it started in November or in the fall, and then we had at least a quarter, if not a third of the school year cut. So you're still very fresh.
It's a crazy year. Yeah. This before I knew I was going to talk to you, I looked up all of the different resources. And now that I see that Chicago Public Schools provide so much for their GSA leaders and their students, I am amazed and impressed. And I can't wait to use all of those resources next school year.
That's great. And it's great. And I'm glad they're there. It's also a testament to how, like with any very large system like CPS, there can be really good resources that somebody has put together at the top level. But if we don't have a mechanism to communicate that to people like you who are starting GSAs, then there's a gap that we have to navigate there, which is part of the reasons why these events are so helpful.
Yeah.
To make sure anyone listening hears your story of how the GSA was created, that there are resources at the school district level to
So
support
many.
teachers
I
and
mean,
staff.
just going to gsa.org or Safe Schools Alliance, and people will come in. I think that the reason I struggled is because from what I've seen, I've I've been unable to find a GSA in a middle school. So there are many there. I think probably all the high schools probably have a GSA. I mean, I'm totally guessing that, but I think that that is very common. I don't think it's as common in a middle school setting. So
That is super
sixth,
interesting.
seventh, and eighth grade.
Yeah. And as I mean, I can take a guess on why that is, but like when we look at the kind of the harm that exists in the world and the lack of inclusion and how statistics bear that out, which this is a number, but when you think about what it actually means, it is very heartbreaking that suicide being the second leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to
It's
24.
terrifying.
And just speaks to the fact that we need to create inclusive, welcoming, supportive places across the board pre-high school for sure. And of course that includes spaces for LGBTQ youth. Speaking of starting this, we did get a question in the chat, and hopefully we'll get a lot more, and I have a bunch more questions. But this speaks to the pre-high school stuff. So somebody is asking a question about, especially given that you're at a K-8 school, does the GSA require any sort of parental permission forms? This person's noting that that's been an obstacle in other areas, and how did your group handle that?
I didn't do it. Maybe I should have. It was during school. So that's my way of kind of avoiding that, because this, I don't know that I'm a good example to even say this, and I hope I don't get in trouble, but I'll be totally honest. A lot of the kids that were in this group don't want their parents to know quite yet, and that's okay. And as a trusted adult, I'm not allowed to tell parents. I can't tell parents about their child's sexual orientation. It's not my place, and it's against the law. So we did it during lunch because it was during school hours and it was optional. But that is definitely something I'm going to have to navigate next year, because I do think that we need more time than just a rushed lunch and a rushed recess. So I want to provide a space after school as well. So I will have to figure out how to navigate that. When I was looking through the Illinois Safe Schools resources, a lot of them, people change the names of the clubs, so the parents don't necessarily know what the club is. But that's really it's kind of between a rock and a hard place, because I don't want to be deceitful to parents, but I also don't want to break anyone's trust. It's a really hard one.
Yeah, it's really challenging. And then I know you don't, we don't want to accelerate stigma that already exists. And the goal is to be inclusive, welcoming, and supportive. So anything that's sort of secretive in some ways conflicts with that. But at the end of the day, it's about keeping kids safe and making sure they are supported, keeping them safe from the bad outcomes that we know can exist when we don't support kids, like depression.
I don't have any regrets about not being fully open about it, because it was during school, and I saw the benefit and the impact that it had on kids. They suddenly had groups of friends. They suddenly knew each other. And then there were kids who joined the group because they live in a household where their parents are homophobic. And although they were straight students, they thought, oh, well, maybe my parents aren't right. Let me join this club and see if my parents are right. So that was also really effective. We had quite a few kids in that boat that they just wanted to learn more, and they did. And in the end, they came to the conclusion that they didn't agree with their parents. And to me, that was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's, you know,
I hope I'm not going to get in trouble now. It's all right. It is what it is.
I think it's like at the end of the day, it's incredibly important for these groups to exist. And there's no question in my mind that they save lives and they change cultures of schools.
I agree.
So I have a few more questions. Actually, I have a lot more questions. Is there are kids who are not in middle school allowed to join?
As of right now, well, because of the way that it was done, no, just because of the way our lunch periods work.
Got it. Okay. If scheduling I mean, what do you think about that? Kind of if the scheduling and logistics wasn't an issue?
I don't know that I would have them join the middle school group. I would be more comfortable maybe creating another group because it is a safe space. And I don't know that, 9 and 10-year-olds are dealing with the same exact issues as 13 and 14-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it would be appropriate. Some of the things that we talk about, I don't know that it would be appropriate for a lower grade level, but I do think it would be nice to have something for the younger kids if there was a desire or a need.
Yeah, I think the key for this issue, but for a bunch of other issues that when there's pushback, people can lose sight of is age appropriate. There's many different ways to do things in age appropriate ways. And that's the lens that we have to see it all through and operate through. How have you, so this is, again, this is amazing because it's relatively new. Have you seen anything in terms of the impact of the group's existence on the school overall and the culture? Kind of, even though based on what you're telling me, it's not like everybody knows there's a GSA, but it is there to create inclusion. Have you seen any impact on the school overall?
I've seen, so because we kind of kept it on the down low and we called it 472 and a lot of kids didn't know about it. That's hard. We were going to bring ourselves out. That was the plan, to kind of come out in like April and really do things within the school, which we didn't have the opportunity to do. But in terms of, I think that it benefited the climate because it gave some of the kids who had previously been picked on a group of upstanders to support them. I think it gave them a support system, but it also told when we practiced in the club, we would practice standing up for ourselves in different situations. And I think that enabled the students to kind of go out and use these techniques to stand up for themselves and say, that word's not okay, or I have a problem with the way you're talking about this. And I think that it probably surprised some of the students who weren't used to that coming back at them. And I think that it definitely benefited them. I think it also gave teachers an ability to help students that maybe I don't know. So there were teachers that would be working with other students and send them then to me, and I would never have had that opportunity to get to know them. And then they would have never had that opportunity to have that great support system. I think the best thing to come out of it really was just a support system and practicing how to deal with bullying remarks.
Skill building, really, because it's one thing to hear somebody say, here's how you can deal with a situation where you feel attacked or bullied, but to create a space where we do it sometimes when we're in certain trainings, when people are actually role playing, that's how you build skills, and that's
Exactly.
how you build your confidence. And then you can, come back to the group and tell people how it went.
And that's what we did. That's exactly what we did this year. And then we would share and celebrate, and it would be really great. And it didn't always work out well. Like, we'd have a really great plan and it wouldn't work. And the kid would come back and be like, all right, it's not any better, but we're still trying, and they still know that they have that system behind them of support. And I think that's so important.
Yeah. Have you, so this is going to be something new this year that I want everyone listening now and later to know about, and to kind of hear your thoughts on, because it's very connected to creating supportive and inclusive environments in school. But before I became a state rep, the General Assembly passed a bill for an inclusive LGBT curriculum, which is actually slated to start in the 2020 school year, which I'm super excited about. And I'm excited about for a lot of reasons. And I would love to know what you think about it. But something I think about a lot, which is one of the reasons why this LGBTQ inclusive curriculum is important. Well, first of all, it didn't exist before. And we heard the statistic at the beginning about how only a quarter of students in Illinois have heard anything positive about LGBTQ people in their classroom, which is tragic to me. But just this whole idea that, we hear about a lot across various different populations of how important representation is, how it's so important to know that people that look like you, that grew up like you, can do anything they want to do. And of course, history hasn't really borne that out. But we're making changes. And right now, of course, the city of Chicago has their first LGBTQ mayor. That's one kind of piece of evidence of representation and how important it is. So can you talk a little bit about kind of the curriculum that is coming, and why you think it's important, and how it might coincide with the work that you're doing on the ground at Dever Elementary?
So we haven't gotten info. So there was another bill that was also passed to bring civics in. You have to have a semester of civics now as well. So I still haven't gotten any. I've gotten information on the civics. I haven't really gotten a lot of information on exactly what grade level we're supposed to be doing and what the curriculum is. I don't know if they're going to create a curriculum for us or they expect us to do it. I honestly have no idea. But I do know that the sexual health curriculum that Chicago Public Schools already provides does address those things. Although not every school got that this year. I know that all of those things are addressed. And I think we need some information, to be totally honest. And I think it's kind of late in the year, like school's coming in 2 months. And I'm not quite sure what exactly the expectations are of that. I already I try to bring that into my classroom just all the time anyway, just so that we're seeing different walks of life. History, instead of teaching like the regular, we like to teach the people whose stories aren't necessarily told. And that's what we focus on. So people like Harvey Milk, or now I was talking to Jessica about the Trevor Project, and there are a lot of things that we can do. But right now, I actually, I don't know yet what next year is going to look like with that.
Yeah. Well, we have a great resource that my team just popped in the comments, and it's a resource on the Illinois Safe Schools Alliance website. And it's basically, you can get your name on a list to get updates about implementing the new inclusive curriculum.
Awesome.
So that will be good for you, but also for other teachers that you work with at Dever, or any other teacher or school leader that is following along.
I do know that as an educator, I think that and teaching an 8th grade classroom, I think that student leadership is really, really important. So oftentimes students will help teach the lessons or create the lessons, particularly if it's something I wasn't going to teach, but they're really interested and they want to do a lesson on it. So I think that it might be really interesting to have our 472 help implement some of these lessons. And our school would go for it. The teachers would be fine and the principal would be fine. And I think it would be really great if part of that was also student led.
Great. And we got a comment from my friend Michael Ziri, who works at Equality Illinois, which is, can you hear me, Mandy?
Yeah, I'm just writing it down. Yeah.
Okay, great. So Equality Illinois is the leading advocacy organization for LGBTQ rights in Illinois, and they played a huge role in the inclusive curriculum. And he just notes that they're working on guidance and resources. So he.
Oh, thank you. Does he know when they're coming out?
He's listening, so we'll see if he pops up.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know more about that. I wish I did, but I don't.
But you got to start somewhere, and this is all new. And as a policymaker, it just reminds me that it's one thing to pass laws, but then to implement them and to make sure they're functioning as intended on the ground, and doing that education is extremely important. I want to just touch on one piece of legislation that I am sponsoring in Springfield, and it did not get to proceed this year because our legislative session was truncated by the pandemic. So we had to focus on certain things related to COVID and economic recovery, which of course meant so many very important pieces of legislation that will create more opportunities for people and keep people safer, had to be tabled. So one of the bills that I'm really excited about to move forward with when I get back to Springfield, which will probably be next spring, will be the time where a larger menu of things can be tackled, is a bill in partnership with the Trevor Project that would make it so schools in Illinois, when they do their suicide prevention work, which they have to do now, that they recognize in that prevention work that there are certain youth populations that are at an elevated risk for suicide. And this is it's just a fact. Youth experiencing homelessness, youth in our foster care system, LGBTQ youth, and of course, those are not mutually exclusive. Somebody can be all those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just apart from the statistic I shared at the beginning, ages 10 through 24, suicide, second leading cause of death, that is elevated if you're in these populations. Sounds like such a clinical word, and it sounds weird. No, but it's so this bill would make it so school districts have to do targeted work for those elevated populations, which is a form of inclusion.
I like that. I like that a lot. I know that we use Alyssa's mission for suicide prevention, and they come out every year and they're fabulous. But I think an added LGBTQ aspect and giving resources directly to those students would be very, very beneficial.
Excellent. Well, that's future, and that's something we have to tackle because it really is.
Can our 472 help you with that? Can we write letters?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. Cool. So Mike from Equality Illinois says the plan is for this summer, and his email's in here, so we'll make sure that.
Awesome. I'll look at it and I'll get in touch with him. That's fabulous.
Great. So Mandy, because you have this on the ground experience that's really fresh, because this is a pretty new GSA, what would you say if you're giving advice to leaders at other schools? What would you say best practice, definitely do this, and what would you say you learned, don't do this?
Just do it. Just in terms of best practice, just create a safe space. Maybe start off with a few students who you think really would benefit it. from a GSA and let them help you create the safe space. I don't think the educator necessarily is in charge of creating the space. I think that it's the creating community and then that community creating the safe space. I think that having the students run the club from start to finish and being in charge of talking and being in charge of how the group speaks. We had like a little totem and we would pass it around. I think that student leadership is the most important. In terms of what not to do, it was kind of hectic and we didn't really, I wish I would have done it after school, and I wish I would have found a better way to advertise. And I'm looking forward to doing a lot of those things this summer, just figuring out how to create a safe space. My issue is always, do I let everyone know we're doing it? Because what if kids come and then they are not coming for the right reasons, and this is supposed to be a safe place? So figuring out what that safe space looks like with your students. I don't think that we as adults can know what they need unless they tell us. I think every kid is different. So finding a time and a place that's very regular and being consistent, that's what I wish I would have done more of.
Got it.
And we will. We'll do better next year. We'll do better every year. It's a learning process. And this year was insane.
It was very, very atypical. I loved what you said about, in terms of advice and best practices, just doing it, just starting it and not getting too caught up in, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Just move forward. And then the youth leadership component is so extremely important, because it's not just the content of the group and how important that is, but it's also, we should all be doing this as adults in this world who want kids to be successful, creating opportunities for leadership and learning. And that's a part of what you're doing.
And I think it's also important to remember that it doesn't need to look the same at every school, and it doesn't need to look the same every year. So I just lost, 15 members. They just graduated. So, and they were our leaders. So the incoming sixth graders and the seventh graders and the new eighth graders, their needs might be different. And knowing that and letting the kids tell you what they need and focusing around that, because every year, I think it'll probably change. We may have a year where they don't want to be advocates and they don't want to be involved in the community. And we may have a year where they, want to write letters to elected officials and have a huge parade. And I think that I'm not going to pressure them to do anything. I'm going to let them lead the way. And if the GSA looks different every single year, it's okay not to know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. I'm just figuring it out based on what the kids tell me that they need. It's okay if you don't know what you're doing. It doesn't mean you cannot start a GSA. If I can do it, anyone can do it. Truly.
The important part is that we are kind of learn from what we're doing every day, no matter what our role is. That's what makes us successful. I'm a state rep, so I, think about policy and government a lot. And this morning I was on a conference call with our mayor. So I'm thinking about what's going on in the city.
That's so cool.
What, I mentioned this before, the fact that Chicago, we had our first female Black mayor who's also LGBTQ. Is that something you talked about? Or
yes.
Did you kind of did you see a reaction from youth?
Oh my gosh, did we talk about it? We wrote her, every single student wrote her a letter. Every single one of my students. We watched her, we followed the election, we voted, well, a fake vote. But the kids voted. We definitely discussed it. We watched her acceptance speech. We took notes. We stole a Lori Lightfoot sign from outside. And then on the sign, we put all of the amazing and inspirational things that she said during her speech. And then the kids all wrote her letters, congratulating her and then asking her questions. and every kid got a letter back. It wasn't personalized, but like, I get it. It's a big city. So we definitely talked about all of that. To a point where it was a lot. The kids made fun of me because I was just so excited. And then I don't know, but we looked up her wife. We researched everything, and we were really excited. It was a huge deal in my classroom when Lori Lightfoot was elected.
And talk more about how important it is for kids to see people like them, if they're LGBTQ, in roles across the board, in different fields and disciplines, in jobs that they might be thinking about doing when they grow up.
It's essential, because if you look at the United States history and you look at, we don't use history books, but and this is something we talk about all the time, if you just look at the forming of our nation and you go to any textbook or encyclopedia or whatever, it's going to talk about rich white males. And that's who it is for a lot of history on. And we're not hearing other stories. So by seeing right now that there is an African-American gay woman in charge of her city, I think that's empowering. I think that they need to see students and me. I want to see people of all races and genders and in leadership positions, because it makes me see, well, hey, if she can do it, so can I. Maybe some students don't want to be the first to do something, but when we have a whole bunch of firsts going on, we have people to follow and people who empower us. And I think that our mayor absolutely did that. And so did a lot of people in the city. I think it's wonderful.
I do too. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about the new LGBTQ inclusive curriculum. I think it's going to be very empowering, and it's just so important and I liked how you said, not just youth, everybody, for us as people living in this world, to see that leaders across the board reflect who we are in our diversity. And everyone, we bring our different lenses to whatever role that we are in. That's another reason it's important. So we're going to wrap up soon, but I have a kind of a closing question for you, Mandy, and we'll take a look at the comments and see if any other questions popped up. But what can I do in my role as the state representative in the district where your school is? What can I do and think creatively to support LGBTQ youth, let's say in my district or across the state of Illinois? And then I'm also not just me, I do want to know what I can do from you, but also what can our neighbors who live in this area do to support LGBTQ youth and students?
Okay, in terms of sorry, I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I remembered what I was going to say. So in terms of what you can do, first of all, you do so much already. You're so visible in the community, and I think that's absolutely amazing. You've just taken this and gone with it. In terms of what you can do, so I saw last night that Illinois, the Alliance has lots of different trainings, and I think they're offered for free. So you could offer, you could reach out to different schools and say, hey, at our office on this day, I know after the coronavirus is, after we found our vaccine or figured out our new way of life or whatever it is, but maybe hosting events, whether virtual or in person, that would teach teachers how to become GSA leaders. Or there are also, I know that there are just so many workshops that are offered. So maybe it could be offered through your office. I think that could be something that you could do, or even doing what you do. You've been to my school a few times. You're visible. The kids know who you are. How often do kids know who their state reps are? I never knew who my state rep was, but at Dever, we know it's Lindsay LaPointe. And I think just being visible, especially even maybe showing up for a GSA meeting, you're invited, anyone's invited. in terms of community, same thing. You know, if you're a community member and you want to support your local school, you can volunteer. Everybody can, you have to go through a background check, but volunteers are always welcome in schools, particularly if you have an area of expertise that could really benefit the LGBT community. Contact me, contact schools, contact principals, and just say, hey, I want to be part of this. What can I do? And someone will respond and somebody will say yes. I know we would, and I know my principal would. Because that's how we found you. I think that Jessica showed up at our school one day to see how you could be involved in our school. And that's when I was like, I want to help. And that was how our relationship was created.
Yeah, I love it. There's always ways to be involved. And I think we all have, you know, no matter who we are, everybody has gifts and area of expertise. Sometimes we overlook them. Sometimes it's just, you know, sharing your experience with students and kids. And there's a lot of value in that. But we often don't think about, you know, who cares if you're a state rep or not? That doesn't matter. But what do you bring to the table? And what gifts do you have that you can share with school communities?
And the kids would love it. Some adults might think maybe they don't want me to come in. Kids love guest speakers. They love it when people come in. They love learning from different adults in our community, whether it's a veteran or a librarian or anyone. Whenever we bring anyone into the classroom, kids are thrilled. They love it. They love it so much. It makes them very happy.
Excellent. Well, now I'm super inspired when things are back to normal
oh my gosh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see my students.
And how are you keeping in touch with them right now?
We do, well, we're still, school's over, but we're still doing Google Meets. And we're all watching Hamilton together live. We decided. So I'll like put on a Google Meets and we'll all watch it together on July 3rd. So we have email groups, and whenever they want to do like just a group chat with me, whatever, they just have to email me and say, hey, Ms. Guzman, you know, so-and-so, and I want to do it on Friday. What times are you available? And we just do it. We'll do it for like an hour, and we just sit and we hang out and we talk about whatever. And it fills my soul, and I think it fills theirs, because obviously they're still wanting to do it and school is over. So I'm hoping to kind of keep that connection through this summer, so that when we do get back to school, we'll be starting on the right foot, and we'll be so happy to finally be together that, I don't know, I'm really excited. And I'm really excited to be Hamilton with them.
That's awesome. And just maintaining those connections, because we really shouldn't take for granted that kids have a place to feel welcome and supported over the summer.
Exactly, which is why I still want to keep doing these Google Meets, because I like it too. Like I love talking to them. They're hilarious and wonderful. So it's good for all of us. We need it.
Excellent. Well, we have come up on a little beyond 12:30. Is there anything else right before we wrap up, Mandy, that you want to share that we didn't get to cover?
No, I'm good. I mean, if anyone is watching this and you want my opinion or you want advice, we can put my work email address, like in the chat. I don't claim to know everything, but I do know where the resources are, and I do know how to find them, and I do know how to find the trainings. And I'm willing to help anyone with whatever they want. Absolutely.
Excellent. And I think a key thing that you shared that really was a catalyst for you getting this group started and for Dever students to get this started was the visit from Molly, the 8th grader, from Buffalo Grove. So just speaking of bringing
and if you want to connect with the Pinta family, also I can connect you with them, because they were really excited to do it. And this is what I think Molly wants to do with her life. And she's got 2 awesome teacher parents that are just completely behind her. So excellent. I'll put my email.
Or perhaps some of your students at Dever, you know, you never know, they could turn into a Molly.
What I want to work on next year is providing them with training on speaking skills and learning the laws around LGBTQ, especially within schools and what their rights are. I want to definitely focus on that a lot next year.
Excellent. You have good ideas. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mandy. I know that we will talk soon. And thanks for taking the time to be a part of this and getting this information out into the world.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay.
Bye.